This is the Dental Protection Podcast. My name is Dr. Alasdair McKelvie, and this is the Spotlight on South Africa series. So in today's podcast, we're going to be talking about indemnity, and joining me today once more, we have Dr. Jacobus Bernard, who most of you will know is the SADA dental mediator. And also with us today is my colleague from the MPS Pretoria office, Dr. Yash Naidoo. So, hi guys, how are you all doing?
Hi, Alasdair.
Hi, Jacobus. Hi, Alasdair. Good to be with you both.
Okay, well, we decided we wanted to have a chat about indemnity, and it's not to promote dental protection or anything like that, but it's just to sort of find out a little bit more, particularly from Jacobus, about the dentists and the hygienists and the therapists he assists, about their indemnity arrangements and attitudes towards indemnity. So, Jacobus, I'm straight in on you here. So there's lots of people you assist with complaints through the mediation process. Approximately how many of them are members of an indemnity organisation like Dental Protection, or maybe have an insurance-based indemnity? Is this something that you ask them, and what sort of feedback do you get?
Yes, thanks, Alasdair. Yeah, so that's probably the first question I would ask a dentist when I try and resolve a dispute is, are you a member of any indemnity organisation like Dental Protection? And probably less than half the dentists that I help are members of Dental Protection or another indemnity organisation or SADA. And I know in the UK, where I worked for 7 years, and many other countries around the world, having professional indemnity is compulsory and a prerequisite to be registered with the regulator and practice your profession. But it's certainly not the case in South Africa. And these dentists that are not members of Dental Protection or SADA, they love to use the mediation service because it's a free service. And it's accessible to everyone, whether you're a SADA member or whether you're not a SADA member.
Yeah, so I mean, it's worth making that point, isn't it? I mean, you don't have to be a member of SADA to use the mediation service. You don't have to have indemnity. If you've got indemnity, you can still use the mediation service. It is there for everybody. But I'm interested in talking about indemnity. Yes, it's not compulsory in South Africa, and there's a lot of guys working without indemnity. What do you think are the main reasons? I mean, presumably you ask them in the question, and you might follow up with, okay, you've not got indemnity or any insurance, and the next question is, why not? So do they get it, or what sort of answers do you get from them?
You know, that's always a question I want to ask them is why? Why don't you have indemnity? You know, they think they don't need it and that it's a nice to have. But the only reason that makes sense for me is money. You know, it's challenging to run a profitable practice nowadays. We've got the rising costs of consumables and staff and load shedding issues. So I guess the first place that makes sense to try and save a penny is on your indemnity.
So, Alasdair, if I can jump in there, you know,
sure.
I think it's about awareness. In my experience, what happened is, and I think back into when I was an undergrad and how I ended up becoming a Dental Protection member, is that one day when I was in fourth year, or I think in fifth year, some representatives from Dental Protection came and gave us a talk, and we signed up as students, and we forgot about it and never thought about it again. And what tends to happen, I noticed with my colleagues, is as soon as we leave university, the first thing we start doing is we now have bills to pay. We have houses to rent and homes to buy and families to take care of. And we start looking at, let's see, how can I cut my costs? Oh, I've got this thing that's called indemnity. Do I really need it? Is it compulsory, or can I cut it off and save a few $1,000 a year? And what tends to happen is, as soon as the students leave university, they try and do a cost-cutting exercise, but they're not aware of what they're actually sacrificing by getting rid of it. And so personally, I think it's also an awareness issue as to the benefits and the consequences of not being part of an indemnifier, professional indemnifier. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, I was just it couldn't have been me that spoke to you at dental school because I'm not that old. But putting that bit aside, you hear about indemnity at dental school as an undergrad. You then go straight into your ComServe year if you stay in South Africa. And of course, you're in a way, you're protected by the state. But there are a lot of dentists who continue to work within the state service that don't see the need for an indemnity. If they harm a patient through negligent dental care, then the chances are that the state will pick up any claim and there'll be no problem for them. But there are lots of other things that can go wrong in your professional life that I know you know about that might have an impact on those of our colleagues working in the state sector. Can you just very quickly just give us a list of maybe 4 or 5 key things that could happen that indemnity would assist one of those dentists with who makes a career working in the state?
Yeah, so you've alluded to that notorious misconception that me, personally, I had, and a lot of my colleagues still have, is that when you're working in the state, you're, in inverted commas, covered. A perfect example of where there might be a situation in which you're not covered by the state or not protected by the state is where your own employer lodges a complaint against you with the Health Professions Council. And I've seen this happen to friends and colleagues and come across it in my work as a lawyer and here, is that there are situations, unfortunately, where a line manager or somebody more senior at a facility is unhappy with your conduct and submits a complaint to the HPCSA. And I've seen situations where the employer then just washes their hands of the situation, and the poor dentist who was under the misapprehension that they would be assisted by their facility has nowhere to go. And this is why I always ask my friends and family and colleagues who practice in the state, please do not be misled by this misconception. You need indemnity, and it doesn't have to be dental protection. It can be anybody, but just have something.
And of course, that indemnity will not be the same price as what the guys pay in the private sector, because the insurer or the indemnifier is not indemnifying the claim for compensation. But you're exposed because you've not got access to legal support, legal representation for all of the other professional challenges that can happen in your career, even though that you work in the state. And you gave a really good example there. So Cobus, I want to bring you in again because I've been dying to ask you this question. So in your role as the mediator, you help dentists and patients negotiate a solution, okay? And quite often I know, because of the work I do, that the solution can often be the payment of remedial treatment by the dentist. Now, can you give me, I'm not saying that an indemnifier and insurer will pay for remedial treatment unless it flows from a breach of duty by the original treating dentist. But what I was asking you is what level of financial exposure could a dentist have if they don't have indemnity? So what is the biggest check you know a dentist has written to a patient because they didn't have indemnity in order to resolve a complaint?
Yes, Alasdair, you know you can solve most problems by throwing money at it. Yeah, so there's 2 recent cases that immediately comes to mind. The first one is a GDP who did an aesthetic makeover on with his recently bought CAD/CAM machine, and his first attempt didn't work out like he or his patient expected. He then redid the whole treatment that took the whole Saturday. He missed the rugby, and again it didn't work out. And the patient then contacted SADA. So this dentist didn't have indemnity, and in the end, he had to pay a prosthodontist just over 100,000 Rand to redo the whole aesthetic makeover. So that was expensive school fees. The other one that comes to mind is a female dental therapist that tried to surgically remove a lower right molar on a patient, and she managed to remove about half the patient's mandible as well while trying to remove the roots. And this patient developed osteomyelitis and had multiple sessions in theatre by specialists to treat the condition. And the dental therapist in the end agreed to pay all the medical expenses, which was in the region of about 80,000 Rand. So that's the sort of financial exposure that you are exposing yourself to without indemnity.
Okay, so that sounds around about 10 to 15 years worth of indemnity fees that you're having to shell out. And it could be a lot worse than that. I mean, we quite frequently see claims going into the millions of rands that we have to settle as treatment becomes more complex. Patients are becoming more and more demanding. I just don't know how dentists practice without indemnity, because it's not some things. I don't know whether we all feel bulletproof or not when we're practicing, but you almost get to the point where you think that this is only something that happens to another dentist, and it's not going to happen to me because I get on well with my patients and I'm a good clinician and I'm careful, and I don't really get into any trouble. But these are all the adjectives I would use to describe you, Jacobus, because I know that you're a very conscientious dentist. But I also know that you've had one or two problems in private practice yourself. Do you want to just maybe describe what happened?
Yeah, Alasdair, you and me see every day that bad things happens to good dentists and even to specialists. And I mean, not that I see myself as a good dentist, but I have over 23 years experience, And about 3 years ago, one of my year-long patients suffered a double complication in theatre, and I was removing some impacted molar teeth under general anesthetic. So during the procedure, I accidentally displaced the upper right third molar into the maxillary sinus. It just disappeared. The one moment it was there, and the next it was gone. It's the weirdest feeling. And I saw the patient later that day at my practice to take a pan and to try and find this missing tooth. And I found the missing molar in the sinus where I expected it. But then I saw that there was also a fracture in the mandible on the right side where I removed the lower right eight. I had no clue that this has happened during the procedure. I mean, I was gutted. It's a double complication on a regular patient that I really cared for. I have over 20 years experience with removing impacted third molars. I didn't do anything different that day, So fortunately, I was a member of Dental Protection, and their discretionary approach allowed them to get involved early and help me and my patient to get the best outcome for everyone. My patient was fairly compensated for the injury and for her time off work without the involvement of any third parties. So my career and my financial interests were protected. Today I still do impactions. I actually did a list in theatre 2 days ago. I still see my patient and her family as patients. I still see them at school and in the spa when I go and do my shopping. So having indemnity really helped me to carry on with life as it should be. It gave me the confidence and the financial security to protect my reputation and just continue the treatment. So the thing is that things go wrong for experienced dentists and specialists as well, and we see it every day, Alasdair and Yash. And that's exactly why we need indemnity, so that our patients are fairly compensated when things go wrong.
But this patient didn't sue you, did they? I mean, patients don't want to sue dentists, do they? I mean, is that the feeling you get? They're not looking to sue the dentist. They don't really want to get attorneys involved, but they want a fair resolution as the outcome, don't they?
Yeah, so what I always say is that the path always follows the path of least resistance. So it's only when they've tried and resolved it with the practice first that they follow other routes, offering more resistance. So they will always try and resolve it with the dentist first, and only then, if they're ignored or dismissed, then they will contact a third party or a third person to try and resolve their complaint.
And there's something I want to throw in here, Jacobus, that I'm not sure everybody understands, but the SADA mediation service is completely impartial and separate from Dental Protection. We are colleagues, we work in the same area, but we're not connected, we're not linked. And a member of dental protection in a mediation process with you and their patient can contact us, and we will advise the member, we will support the member, and where there's merit to it, we will look to support the member financially where there's a situation where they should be paying for remedial treatment that the patient now needs and shouldn't have needed. So I think the key point I'm trying to make here is just because you're in a mediation with Jacobus Bernard of the SADA mediation service doesn't mean you don't inform your indemnifier or you don't get your own advice. Your job is not to advise the dentist. Your job is just to find a solution. Our job is to advise and support the dentist so that they go into the mediation process knowing what the merits of the patient's complaint are. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so when we work with a complaint with a dentist that is a member of dental protection, that dentist now participates in a voluntary, solution-focused mediation service with the confidence and the backup and the support of expert legal advisors.
Thanks, Jacobus. And finally, coming back to you, Yash, I'm just going to throw something your way, again, with your legal hat on here, but too often we see practice owners working with their own indemnity, but they're employing hygienists or therapists or other dentists to work in the practice and not making sure that those individual clinicians have their own indemnity. If there was one piece of advice, and I think I'm about to answer your question, if there is one piece of advice you would give to dentists who have other clinicians working for them in their practice and about indemnity, what would that advice be?
I'm nervous now because I hope that my answer is the same as what you've got in mind. But the answer is make sure that every clinician in your practice has indemnity, their own indemnity. Build it into your contracts and make sure that everybody's got their indemnity because you never know what might happen.
Well, you've passed, you gave the correct answer, the one I was thinking and hoping that you'd give. And with that, we reach the end of today's podcast on indemnity. And if you'd like a certificate for listening to this podcast to go towards your CPD or to learn more about what we've covered today and who you are listening to, please do take a look in the podcast description. My name is Alasdair McKelvie. I've been your host. My guests today have been Jacobus Bernard and Yash Naidoo. Thank you all for listening.